what I don't want to see is the success of our customers contingent on tokens. I don't want to see the success of the industry contingent on tokens.
My guest today is Luke Prescott, head of product at Bluebeam, the PDF markup tool that basically every estimator and project manager in construction has open right now. He just shipped Bluebeam Max, their big bet on putting AI inside the tools people already use instead of asking them to start over. So he's got a pointed take on practical AI. We're going to dive into it versus what we're hearing here on the hype. And yeah, I guess, Luke, thanks for joining.
All right. Thanks, Jose. Appreciate you and your audience letting me hang out with you all for a few minutes.
It's Friday. You probably got a million back-to-backs, but I appreciate the time.
Hey, this is great to be here. Thank you.
So, all right, let's get into it. You've got a million things in front of you. Everyone's selling AI in construction right now. Sure. What's actually real? What's the demo? Help us kind of unpack what's happening right now in AI and construction documentation.
Right. I love that. It's fun. Maybe that's a great way to start. This is an incredible time to be doing what we're doing, to be either offering construction technology or building, designing. This is a moment in history. I think we all we take a breath and just observe it and see where we're at. I think when we think about where Bluebeam fits within the story, and I think I probably can feel most comfortable speaking from that perspective. I'm sure we can sort of talk from other perspectives as well. But when I think about where Bluebeam is at, our customers have a really high expectation for us of practicality, functionality, working for all of their users on day zero. Like that's what it's expected to do. It's like sort of the everyday tool. Our customers too, and I can share some stories at some point, but they have viewed Bluebeam as their partner in transition from paper-based to digital. And to be honest, a lot of our organizations, companies that we worked with, were doing and building what they were building before a lot of digitization. Really many before, the era of PDF and email, some even before the era of PCs. And so Bluebeam is considered a trusted partner in the transition from paper-based to digital. And we're really viewing this as another extension of. So a lot of our customers are coming to us and saying, hey, look, we're kicking around what it looks like to use AI. We have all these ideas and we have all of these established work processes that we're doing. And I'll give you some fun examples later on, but we have all these established things that we're doing. How do we marry up our expectations of business results that are necessary week after week with this new innovation that in some cases just feels very, experimental or beyond or innovative. And so there's a bridge opportunity there. So I guess maybe in summary, what I think about is there's sort of two core approaches that we're taking. We're taking transformative and incremental. Our customers need incremental in 2026 because they're trying to solve existing problems and they can't break their process. We all know customers, the industry, technology providers, this is also transformative. And so we're thinking, what does it mean to be transformative in the future? So I think it's sort of a dual path.
Help me understand the different frameworks and vertices that you're navigating. So Bluebeam has become synonymous with effectively empowering the entire industry with PDFs and takeoffs.
Sure.
You got there's kind of bar none there. As I look at the spectrum of different file formats and every wave that's come between paper to digital, CAD, BIM, etc. Somehow PDF is still around. How do you see PDF and its role within a kind of spectrum of different ways of understanding buildings? I'm curious. What its role is today versus maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
I know that. I think that's a great question. So what's unique about the Bluebeam technology stack is that we view ourselves as this unopinionated, non-prescriptive, flexible tool, right? And when a user first opens Bluebeam, it kind of says to the user, what do you want? What's the problem you want to solve? Like, what kind of trade what's your trade? What's your industry? What's your core need? And of course, whenever we talk to customers, they always have the sort of like unknown new use case of measuring something in some, interesting way, using our custom columns and custom tool sets to kind of compile out this workflow. And they'll say to us often things like, you're the best solution designed specifically for this really niche thing. And it's almost kind of a joke in a way. It's like, well, of course we didn't set out to design that. We set out to build these really flexible tools that you can then compile into a workflow. But I think our customers have an expectation from us that whatever we provide has to be practical and applicable for any job that might come their way. Now, for better or worse, many of the other applications in the industry are designed to solve one specific problem at one specific time. Maybe it's an RFI, for example. Right? I got to log an RFI, so I fill out these fields and I assign it to a person. I think that's great. That makes a lot of sense. Our customers refer to our tool more as the decision-making platform, the collaboration platform that solves those answers. It just so happens that PDF is the underlying file format inside of that. A lot of times people synonymously relate Bluebeam Studio with collaboration as like the core engine of collaboration. And it is. When usually we talk
Yeah.
about collaboration, we're usually referring to Studio. You put your files in Studio and you invite people and you mark up together, whatever it might be. But I think if I were to step back, when I think about collaboration in general, collaboration is the successful expression of intent. And Bluebeam is a tool that empowers intent. And so as a designer, I have an intent that I'm trying to relay in some way. It just so happens that PDF is the vehicle underneath that. And I would argue it is the best vehicle for that because of its ubiquity. And you and I, for whatever reason, could be at different organizations attempting to solve different problems. But I found an issue that I need you to address some way. Maybe it's in a design, or maybe you're a, a fellow trade partner who needs to modify an installation condition or whatever it might be. I'm just a few clicks and a photograph away from you having access to that. And you didn't have to log into something necessarily. Right. Or you didn't have to like kind of
Right.
go through and come into my system, or I didn't have to go into your system. And we're just talking, right? We're working through that problem of intent, graphically describing that. And so I think that's really the story of how PDF fits in the story. It originally became like the best way to electronically visualize a print, and it has morphed. I would say pre-AI, it has morphed into sort of the best way to electronically communicate. And now with
Right.
AI, this is where it gets really interesting. It now becomes this sort of mini portable database that AI can encode and decode on behalf of the user. So I can take a single document in Bluebeam, load it with markup data, load it with lots of text data, lots of information, and I can simply send that to you through various means, either within the Bluebeam platform or outside. And you could just use AI to decode all that and pull it out. And so it's almost like the antithesis to the centralized data store that a lot of apps perpetuate, which makes sense because that's sort of the common structure behind a lot of applications. And it becomes this ubiquitous data store that we can just share very easily. And then there's a tool in AI that can say, what do you need to know about this? And we can get you that
Mm.
information either, proactively as a user might ask, or at some point in the relatively near future, agentically, based on users' parameters.
Do you find in your experience that your users, I guess it depends on what side of the table they sit, if it's an estimator versus, say, a
Mhm.
project manager
Mhm.
versus an architect versus a contractor, but do you find that there's any preference towards, I guess when speaking about 2D, we almost assume that we're speaking about, or rather, when we speak about PDF, we're speaking about 2D versus
Yeah.
kind of 3D. And obviously,
Right.
in like where the industry seems to be pulling, there's kind of different camps.
Yeah.
I'm of the camp that I guess, yeah, I guess depending on what you're trying to do, I guess probably determines what format or perspective, right, is most
Yeah.
useful. But you have a front row seat to this. Are you
Yeah.
seeing certain workflows just
Yeah.
prefer just good old PDFs, and that's why they're just not, rather 2D, and that's why, that's
Yeah, it was funny. We actually just hosted our user event in Germany, and we had an architect there as part of our customer panel, and they were describing things. And he was showing this beautiful design of a structure that they were building, and it had this sort of beautiful, like kind of ribbed, almost like a skeletal function of these ribs with these kind of waves function. And he had this sort of really sort of very insightful expression where he just said, BIM is where the design happens. PDF is where the decisions happen. And the reality is there was no way to communicate the beauty and intricacy of the design without BIM. There was no way to execute that project without the power of communicating through 2D PDF and the expertise that's required to bring all those people together. We now our solution does not focus on the BIM side of the equation, but our customers are as equally invested in the efficacy of BIM for the execution of their projects as they are within the Bluebeam tool stack. So we view ourselves as having an equally valuable spot on the field. To use a World Cup analogy there, which is fitting, I think, for this week. But well, I mean, we view it as that's just part of the toolkit that our customers use and need. And so our goal is how do we continue to provide the best communication tools possible to get the breadth of participants and their expertise, their intent, back to that intent idea, to get their intent into design to keep that thing moving forward and getting built.
yeah. One thing that strikes me interesting, certainly about the position that you're in, is that with the rise of foundational models, getting information into to Claude ChatGPT, whatever it might be. It seems like everyone is having this kind of like aha moment, like we can, read documents and that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, sure,
In
sure.
in in construction and design, where every inch in certain cases matters here, and
Mm-hmm.
the difference between getting something right and wrong is real dollars or real lives at stake. How do you filter through some of the noise that you might see through foundational models that could read PDFs, but
Yeah,
navigating the tension between that
right.
and what customers might expect with a certain level of precision?
Yeah, I love it. Our customers know exactly the problem that they need to solve. Like, and they've been solving that problem in some cases for decades, literally in some cases centuries. Like, so we have customers that have businesses that are hundreds of years old. What they're trying to do is say, I want to use AI to solve these known problems. I'll give you some great examples. Come to find out, this is sort of a no surprise. AI is really good at building bookmarks and page labels and identifying scale and details on drawings. So we simply asked ourselves, great, how can we help our customers who are doing this thousands of times over, tens of thousands of times over daily, create bookmarks, page labels, set scales, do book hyperlinks, things like this. How can we just help to automate that with AI? There's a very easy paths to do that. Now, it doesn't even really feel like AI in some ways because it can just be just merged directly into their use case. But that's one case. But then there's another set that says, how can we use computer vision to detect some anomalies across this design that maybe would not be discovered on first pass, right? Another example of that would be, like running a quick example in I put a reflected ceiling plan into Bluebeam Max, and I asked it, tell me what I don't know about this. And it detected that two metal ceilings were at different heights. And it just said, hey, just a heads up, might not be a problem, but you've got the same metal ceiling type, metal O1, it's at two different heights. There might be something happening here. Oh, and by the way, because there are two different heights, double check your plenum because you're going to have to run your ducting up and over. So make sure you've got the proper clearances for your ductwork and services. And you think that's an interesting use case in which there would be someone with expertise who would sit down and take a couple hours and detect those things, ideally, right? And eventually those things would be discovered earlier the better, granted. So our customers are seeing those in two different lights. It's, I have thousands of pages that need bookmarks and page labels and hyperlinks. Let's get that done. And is there a way I can detect the height differences between metal ceilings so I can be aware of plenum differences for my services? It's those types of things that our customers are coming to us. I want to give you another kind of fun example.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation with a customer just a few weeks ago and just sort of asked him, what do you do when you're in Bluebeam? And really what I'm asking is, what are the types of agents you might eventually want AI to do for you? But of course, I'm not trying to lead in that direction. I want to just find out what are the types of things he said. Oh, this is just straight out without even thinking. He said, I measure the volume of air in a given room, and then I compare that to the local codes for the freon tonnage within the air conditioning unit that's specified in the submittals or in the documentation to make sure it's up to code and it's been sized correctly. And I just think, of course you do. And this is the perfect app for that because it's just, you measure the volume, you do a compare, you're doing a search. You think that's exactly the type of thing that we can offer him to define an agent that would look for that, perform a volume measurement. It could go look through the specs, look through the submittals, do a comparison against local code and say, hey, heads up, this isn't quite right, or this looks to be about right. There's maybe an annotation on the drawing or whatever it might be, where he can go in and double check that. But that's the type of thing where as a extensible, flexible, unopinionated application, we have to use AI in the same ways. So
Right.
what we probably would never do is ship that agent. But if we were to offer maybe an agent that could check volume, check against specs, check against local codes, and then annotate on behalf, then the user can say, look, I want it to look for freon tonnage against this and various parameters. And so that's the approach that we're taking, and what our customers expect from us is they're always expecting Bluebeam to be the most flexible tool in their arsenal.
Right. Well, on that note, you just launched Bluebeam Max, and
Yeah.
I think you were alluding to this, but I do think that there's fascinating change. As before, it seems like Bluebeam, as well as most of the industry, was building tools, right? Jose would click a button, click another button, click another
Yeah.
button,
Right.
create
Right.
areas, right? Where
Yeah.
now you're introducing kind of agents, where now things
Mm.
are just, in many ways, seems like it's done for you. How do you navigate the kind of the tools versus done for you, kind of
Yeah.
yourself versus we do it for you? And is that what Bluebeam Max is essentially kind of introducing?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that summary of like do it yourself versus do it for you, I think is the progression of where our customers are going. And we're seeing our customers on this spectrum or journey in which we can say that the core install base, the core block of users are those that do it themselves. They expect to make markups with their mouse, keyboard, and eyes in front of their machine. That's great. There's another level to that where we are exploring what does it look like to introduce tools in which those annotations can be triggered by the user while they're there in front of their machine looking at that. Then there's another aspect to where it can happen on their machine while they're not necessarily looking at it, and then they can verify it. And now we've just now improved a personal productivity story, but we haven't yet got to that sort of collective or joint or shared productivity. And so now what if we take that same concept and then bring that into a team and say, hey, Jose, I just figured out this really cool way to automate this thing that you and I both do separately on our own. I'm going to send it to you, and you can work with that too in some
Right.
capacity. I think
Right.
that's where we're seeing like the evolution. And some of our customers, they're just not there yet in terms of like being able to do all of that to the end of they're just not ready for that direction. But
Right.
our all of our customers, maybe that's probably a good way to put it, all of our customers are ready to explore what that looks like because they're
Right.
all starting to like, poke around with AI and what automation might look like. So it really is it really is an exciting time to see where it's going.
I think that evolution, that discrepancy between the kind of, I'll do it versus, kind of let somebody else do it, ultimately boils down to, how much do I trust you? And like how accurate can I expect thing to be
Yeah,
done if I don't do it? What's your
yeah,
thoughts on that? I mean, where are these agents? How is it performing? What are some of the current limitations you're seeing that
yeah.
maybe are true today, might not be true tomorrow? Like, how do you navigate accuracy and trust building there?
Yeah, I love it. So one thing that we've noticed, and we've had a lot of conversation with customers around this, is they will come into a specific workflow with a budgeted amount of time. And so they'll say something like, I need to, we'll just go back to the bookmarks page label example, right? It's going to take me about 20 minutes to do these bookmarks. And you say, okay, cool. Well, on the spectrum of accuracy versus time, where's your value? And depending on the workflow, we very often hear it's time. And so they'll say, have the bookmarks accomplish the job at a very high accuracy. But if it can save me 90% of the time, I am now 90% ahead of the game, and then I'll budget in the rest and I can finish the job. So I think
Right.
what we're seeing, especially in a tool like Bluebeam, in which in Max, markups can be generated on behalf of the user in a draft state where a user can still see the markups, they can undo, they can delete them. It's not like the burned or flattened into the document themselves. They're able to make these very quick iterations through their documents, identify the areas that were picked up and not picked up, and then pick up the remainder through that balance of time. It's been a really interesting, I think, journey and discovery with our customers on that fact. I think
Right.
there are other AI applications in which accuracy is critical in terms of the output because the output is sort of a final baked result that someone's looking for. So in that case, certainly, I think there's that dichotomy flips. But even the namesake of the product is review. It is
Hmm.
it is a review based application. It is intended for a user to be engaged with this process in a very dynamic way. I'll even give you another example. So we've been experimenting with the idea of what does it look to have AI generate area measurements. Well, naturally, area measurements can have all kinds of different shapes and forms, and what the underlying files might look like. Well, then what does it look like then to pair up these user initiated trim tools or split tools or readjustment and modification tools? So there ends up being this kind of like interesting dance between like AI is able to generate and then the user is able to modify and to refine. And so it still kind of retains and keeps this almost like bespoke identity that is coming from the user. And it's not just like, I sit there and I click a button and the thing just spits out. So
Yeah.
the user's tactile relationship with our software is really important to them. And so we're gonna
Yeah.
we're gonna continue to maintain that.
Has this evolution impacted how you think about business model? When what I mean is, when you look at any construction budget and you look at the line items of software, it's typically Bluebeam's an OG, right? So
Yeah,
there's always
yeah,
going to be a line item there for
yeah,
Bluebeam, typically Autodesk, typically Procore. For the last kind of 10, 15, 20 years, we've kind of been accustomed to kind of like seat based licensing.
sure.
Now in an era where everything seems to be moving into a usage based
Yeah.
licensing,
Yep.
how are you thinking about that? Is that something you're having to grapple with?
Oh yeah, this is absolutely a hot topic. There's a couple ways that we're approaching it. there's what our customers expect from us. There's also what we can do technically, and there's where the market's at in terms of models. So what our customers expect from us, they need it to be there and to work and to be ubiquitous, right? It's on everyone's machine. It's got to work when they open it. It's got to do the thing that they expect it to do. One of the advantages I think that Bluebeam brings to the market is that our core product review is a local desktop application. That's actually, I would consider a superpower in the sense that we have many customers who are able to use that in a variety of different environments that require all the benefits that come along with local desktop. So that's still a core tenet to what we offer, and I think is really important to us. And we actually view that as an advantage, not a bug. Then there's the question of how can we improve existing tools using technology available to us, and how can we optimize cost on that? So there's lots of interesting technologies out there that can help streamline core workflows. Are there ways in which we can use some of that within local models on the user's machine to solve these problems? One great example is we have this new tool called stitching, right? And so you can imagine if you're on a heavy civil project, you have a pipeline or a roadway and it spans, a dozen or so sheets, whatever it might be. What stitching allows you to do is to define the regions on those, 12 different pages, set up match lines and hit stitch, and it will tile them all out into a single consolidated view. It's really cool. It just kind of brings it all together. Well, that's all pre-trained computer vision models that are then on the user's machine. So you install the latest version of Max, you can unplug from the internet and run that tool. That was really important to us because we knew that a lot of customers on these types of projects might not have great internet connectivity, or they might be on sensitive infrastructure work for whatever reason. We wanted to make sure that there was tooling that could support that. So hats off to our engineering team. I will say, I think we have some of the most amazing engineers in the world that are building this technology on behalf of the industry. They are as invested in the success of the global design and construction as I've ever seen anyone. And they are all in on solving these problems. So I think that's another key piece to that. And then finally, there's token costs. What does it look like to manage consumption? I'll just be very transparent. What I don't want to see is the success of our customers contingent on tokens. I don't want to see the success of the industry contingent on tokens. What I want to see is those to be a value add and a support to be able to do business in new and transformative ways. But I also want to make sure that customers do have an expectation that our tools are accessible, they're available, and that they fit within their budget and the parameters of what they're trying to do. And that has been really important to us in the long term. So look, it's going to be a negotiation and a dance, seeing where this is all coming together. But what's also been very encouraging is that there are models available for us to use as part of it, make available to our customers that have a very reasonable exchange of cost and value, that solve important problems, that get our users back to doing what they do best. And that's bringing a level of humanity to design and construction, and not spending hours hyperlinking out a sheet set or setting page labels or doing design looking for, they've got the list of 40 things they're always looking for in every design review. Let's build an agent that will do that and get those people back communicating with their trade partners and bringing their expertise to the table and solving really complex problems. So I think all in all, it's a boom.
What you've had the good fortune of sitting not just on the front lines at Bluebeam, but I believe Procore as well as a few other
Yeah.
places, but have mostly been in and around contact for quite some time here. What,
Yeah.
in your view, are folks not talking about as much that you think should be getting more attention?
Yeah, it's a really good question. One thing I do appreciate about our industry, both from the technology providers and the design and construction professionals, is I think they're way more innovative and adaptable than maybe they get credit for outside of the industry. I'll maybe say that. Our our customers are designing and building the most amazing things ever, and have continued to do that year after year for a very long time. I think where we're seeing the conversations move towards is what's the balance between automation, AI, and human involvement. And like, what does that relationship look like in practice? And we're not just talking about a
Mhm.
theoretical, like, let's sort of sketch out on a whiteboard what the future might look like. It's actually talking about there are boots on the ground today needing to solve problems on a job site. And I think that relationship there is probably going to be the most important topic that we attempt to face. Now, coming out of that, there's the interface of robotics and what that will look like. And I think that's obviously very exciting of what the future will be. But I think from where we're sitting, we like to approach things from a very practical perspective of where our customers and where our industries are at now, and the expectations that when we deliver new functionality, it's got to be accessible, it's got to be performant, it's got to be easy to use, and that's
Yeah.
really a
Yeah.
core tenet. And I think maybe that's what gets me really excited is thinking about offering that on top of existing workflows, and then helping transition the industry into new transformative ways.
I love, to me, it's refreshing the optimism that you and the love that you have for the industry. I know exactly the kind of studies that you're referring to, where a lot of startups tend to refer to the same, like a McKinsey
Sure,
graph of,
sure, yeah,
construction being the least
yeah,
digitized and whatnot. And yet here is an industry that has adopted, everything from, I mean, you name it, business models, capture technology, reality capture,
yeah,
drones, 3D models, 2D, analysis,
mhm,
everything. And so, yeah, I mean, to your point, I think we probably don't get enough credit,
yeah,
right?
yeah, I think so.
And kind of pushing the boundaries,
Yeah.
all while, holding in tension physics buildings.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll go to our user events, and of course, one of my favorite questions is what do you do? And it's obviously not just an icebreaker type of question, but they'll look and say, "Oh, at a general contractor," like, really? I think there's probably something a little more than that. And then you dig a little deeper and you find out like there's some incredibly talented engineers and builders that are putting together things that can only be done with decades of expertise. But the thing that they're doing is they're not doing it isolated within their organization. They're doing it in this coordinated communication dance across all of these other trades and stakeholders and expertise, and they bring them together. We as Bluebeam are absolutely in awe and honored that we are a thread, that we are part of that, and that we play a small, maybe significant, but a measured role within like the future of what designing and building will look like. But at the end of the day, and I'll just draw from my previous experience, it's about people caring for the intent of others, to understand that there is a variety of expertise that comes to the table that has to be leveraged in order to move this thing forward, in order to get us from one phase to another. It's trusted partners, right? It's trusted design professionals. It's bringing the expertise from the field into the design. It's bringing the expertise of the design, make sure that extends all the way out into the field. I think that being part of an organization that is central to that threading is really exciting. And I have no doubt that AI is going to be another tool, like mobile is another example, or like PDF, right? I view PDF as just another tool as part of the communication and coordination ethos of design and construction. But AI
Right.
will be a tool that fuels that into the future.
Yeah. On that tool, you're head of product, and you've had the benefit now of several years in the industry, in the decade. What advice would you give to young Luke coming into this? If you were to drop him here into 2026,
Yeah,
what should he be looking out for the next 10 years of product development? Like, what are the questions he
yeah,
should be asking?
yeah. Don't stop and keep building. Like when I first got into construction, it was right in 2008, 2009, and that downturn, and it was hard times. We were knocking on trailer doors, looking for scope and looking for work, and asking if some of their interior finishes scope was already bid out and bought out. And I love talking with our some of our co-founders who've been doing this since 2002 and have been through many different cycles. And it's easy to get wrapped up in maybe a lot of the I would say concerns about AI taking things over, or whatever it might be, or downturns in economics, and certainly geopolitical things are always a concern when thinking about other regions and what that looks like. But at the end of the day, there is something really important about building relationships, being very focused and intentional about being good at one's craft, whatever that might be, and then grinding. There's just something that's really important about that. I'll also say too, one of the things that I have folks when they get onboarded at Bluebeam, we end up having sort of a welcome conversation. I'll get asked things of like, what does it look like to be successful at Bluebeam? And I'll say it's three things. It's deep product expertise. It's deep industry knowledge about what the problems our customers are trying to solve with or without technology, and it's deep understanding of the adjacent technologies around us. And it is a pattern over and over again in and outside of Bluebeam that those that understand those three core tenets of their respective technology or of Bluebeam have long and fruitful careers in construction technology or even in construction. And so I love staying connected to a lot of my former colleagues that I worked with who are deep expertise in those three areas for their respective materials within craft. So I
Yeah.
think maybe there's a little bit of in the culture today, there's a little bit more of like a flash in the pan, or like sort of it's got to happen overnight. And I just think that there's just a bit of a time component that might be missing to that, where it's more of a journey, and it's more of a exploration and expertise over time. But that would probably be my advice there. But of course, I'd certainly be curious to hear others from their perspective.
Luke, this has been incredibly refreshing. I think in light of so many things advancing, changing, evolving, I think it's a I think it's a sobering reminder that, that as you mentioned, the level of craftsmanship, grit, relationships, these are things that I'm willing to bet 10, 20, 30 years from now is still very much true. So really
Nice.
appreciate you having on.
Great.
For those that want to follow you, how do
Yeah.
they find?
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me there. Luke Prescott, head of product at Bluebeam, technically VP of product at Bluebeam, but would love to connect with you there.
Awesome. Luke, thanks so
Great.
much.
Thanks, Jose. Appreciate it.